Hey everyone, welcome back to the Track Limits podcast. We are here at Montreal. The race just finished. We all attended the race, and what a race, everyone.
It was chaotic, as one might say.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy that going into probably the final 20 laps, no one really know, like, okay, this is the driver that's going to win.
Yeah.
Like, anyone really in the top five could have won. Before we unpack the race, I want to introduce our lovely new guest host.
Woo.
Cristina Lee Mace, or you might know her as Cristina Fast Cars on TikTok. But do you want to give a little bit of a spiel, Cristina, on your background as a creator and what you thought of the race?
Well, as you mentioned, I am a creator on TikTok. I live short form content, but we're going to expand because I have too many thoughts about too many things that can't be contained. So yeah, a lot of videos on informational content. So tech, science, engineering, and rules and regulations, because I've read the sporting regs front to back multiple times, which is too many times. But if you have a question about it, I very most likely know the answer.
Amazing.
I learned most of my content off of your TikTok videos.
And what did you think of the race, Cristina? Why don't you kick us off?
I was stressed. I was very, very stressed, especially because from where we were, our grandstand was facing towards the big ominous clouds that kept coming and then dissipating and then coming. So we were kind of just sitting there being like, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm dry. Oh my goodness, it's coming, is it not?
Yeah.
So very stressed just about the clouds, very stressed watching everybody decide to stay on the intermediates. When are they going to switch over to the slicks? Okay, there's a safety car. Did we hit a groundhog or not? Because again, trackside, the radio isn't always the best, but it did not disappoint as far as the race goes. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah. Yep. I got to give you that. I think when we saw the Haas's go on the wets, we're like, oh, that is very bold.
Yeah.
But they gave us some good, entertaining, 10, 11 laps that we were able to be like, okay, this is going to be fun. And then the rain kind of stopped, and then we saw a bit of a shakeup. They went into pits, which was like they had to. And then the I guess the front 4 or 5 were like out there fighting on the inters when the tires came alive.
Yep.
And then we saw Russell, Norris, and Max battling it out.
Yep.
Until Max went off on turn 2, and then it became a race.
Yep.
Right? So I was excited, and then I don't know. We can talk about the Ferraris.
Even before we talk about the Ferraris, though, I'm curious on Max, because I was seeing on Twitter a lot of people saying, oh, like, put like Hamilton or put Max in that McLaren, they would have won. Like, it's bold, I know, but I'm curious, do you guys think that, there was a possibility for someone else other than Max to win today's race?
Well, there definitely was a possibility. We know, though, Norris had the horrible timing with the safety car.
Yeah.
And at that moment, it was kind of like, okay, now you're going to be stuck behind people. And the moment you have to fight with someone, that gives Max the opportunity to run away with it, which is something he's very, very good at.
Yeah.
So, give us the safety car at a slightly different moment. And I'd say, yeah, McLaren could have won. Yeah, anybody else in that McLaren car could have won.
Yeah.
But this wasn't a case of anybody really making any major mistake in that particular case. It was chaos. I mean, it's a wet race. It was a race with people going off, safety cars. It comes down to timing.
Yeah. But I was also confused as to why they didn't pit Norris right away during that safety.
He was already past the pit line. Like, he wouldn't have been able to go into the pits. That's my understanding of it.
That we missed.
I saw the full safety car go out. I saw him actively go even before the hairpin. The safety car flag had already come out. So we just thought that he ignored to go into the pits and wanted to go in the lap after.
Interesting. Yeah.
Unless it was because maybe we were just unsure because on TV it said safety car. So we were all expecting him to pit, but then when he didn't go in the pits, we're like, oh, what? Is it just for track position? Yeah. Maybe he was just trying to secure that. But
yeah, Max was ahead of him.
Yeah.
And him and George Russell went into the pits, but he didn't decide to go in until I think the next full lap. But then at that point, you already lost 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because you're mandatory to slow down.
And then regardless of that, I also felt with the pit exit, where obviously a little bit too hard on the throttle, maybe right it quick and almost spun. Imagine if that didn't happen. Imagine, because he did have a great pit eventually where it was quick. He had already built up a good 21 second margin. If he had come out in front, could that have changed the result at the very end of the race? I don't know.
Oh, 100%. Because that McLaren was, I think, 0.03 tenths quicker per lap.
Right.
Over any any other driver on the grid.
Yeah.
Or Piastri, he might be a bit slower, but with Norris in that car, he could have done it if he was ahead.
With clean air too.
Yeah, that's why it was such a missed opportunity for him.
Yeah.
Could have won. He could definitely would have won.
But painful day for Williams, for Sergio Perez, and for Ferrari. Who should we talk about first?
Ooh, first one out, I guess.
Who was the first
Logan?
one?
Yeah, Sargent.
Yeah.
Sargent was first one out.
Yeah.
I mean, how much experience does he even have racing in the wets in a Formula One car? That's my big question, because that really does change my evaluation of how he did. Because if this is, less than 3 races that he's done in this car with these tires, then I'm like, okay, yes, this is a learning curve still. And they don't race in the wet very frequently. They never use the wet tires and intermediates. It's such a specific situation. So I'm willing to give him that. This is probably one of the first times you've raced in these particular circumstances. This is only his second time at this track.
That's true.
So I'm willing to be a little bit forgiving of it. But it definitely is not the result he wanted in any capacity.
Not when his seat is in discussion with a lot of other drivers that might take it. Yeah. This is not something you want to show James Vowles or anyone at Williams to say, I deserve to be here. I deserve to stay, which is disappointing because he had coming into this weekend, he was very confident in himself, and even us speaking with him beforehand, a few days before that, he was like, I'm ready to go. Let's make this happen. I want to optimize that. And even qualifying, he did well for his
relative to previous performances.
Exactly. So it's a bit sad to see him go out that way. But it gave us opportunities to see some great action because of the safety car that came out. Yeah. But yeah, Williams was a tough weekend because then Albon a few laps, which wasn't his fault.
Out of control, right? Yeah. I don't know if it was even, I don't think it was Carlos's fault, but it's so unfortunate that Alex got bumped. And, it's unfortunate also because those are potentially 2 teammates in the future based on what James Vowles is saying. But yeah, tough for Albon. For Carlos, though, it just did not feel like the Ferraris did not have any pace throughout the weekend. Just gone.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of confused by that because it's not yes, Monaco, obviously they had a lot of pace, but it wasn't just street circuits that they had a lot of pace. Even in Imola, they had pace, at least to be able to get into Q3. What happened in Canada?
I have no idea. We got to give it to the weather because, you can't even count Friday FP1 or FP2 because I don't think any team gathered as much data as they need to be qualifying, we're going to do this race. This is our strategy. And then FP3, they were just so slow on the straights, which was very confusing for a Ferrari, which usually has a top line speed. And then race was just gone. Even Charles came on right. He's like, how slow am I on the straights? He's like, his race engineer was like, mate, you don't even want to know how bad you are.
Their power unit, I'm going to assume, is the problem this weekend. But that's also incredibly strange because we know how many other teams are using that Ferrari power unit that aren't having this particularly bad of a time. Yes, the Haas's were on the full wets, so that gave them an advantage in those first couple of moments. But we weren't hearing the complaints in a similar way to what we were getting from Ferrari. So it's okay, maybe yes, it is the power unit, but it must also just be a compounding issue of a multitude of things. Yeah. Because if not, we'd be hearing complaints about it from multiple places up and down the grid.
100%. I agree.
And it's not going to bode well because coming up, you have, the Spanish Grand Prix, you have Austria, you have Silverstone, you have tracks where you need straight line speed, especially in Barcelona, right? A couple of overtaking areas are at the end of long straights. Yeah. So, not going to bode well for them. And I think the only other person who had possibly the worst weekend you could imagine was Checo Perez.
Lord have mercy. Where do you start?
We were talking about this last 3 races. He's only scored 4 points, right? Last race, DNF'd, and obviously we weren't expecting his contract renewal to be announced, but it got announced. Yep. And now coming into this weekend, we obviously saw him before the weekend, soapbox racing.
Yeah, that was funny.
Looks like he was in good spirits.
Yeah, he was.
Right? He was having fun. He was excited to talk about his contract renewal. And now you get out in Q1 and you don't even finish the race.
How? I just don't get. And honestly, the problem with Checo is if you take ownership and say, this was my fault, okay, I would accept it. But he went the whole weekend saying, we found an issue here somewhere, or, oh, I didn't have the right temperatures in my rear. Like, it was just all about something going wrong, where it's like, well, look at your counterpart.
Yeah.
He's had issues throughout the whole weekend, and look where he ended up.
Yeah,
so you can't use those same excuses and try to get away with it. But then at the same time, Red Bull made the stance and said, okay, we're signing him because he sells more merchandise. He's fueling a lot of our income or revenue that we're bringing into the team. So it made sense. But then you see weekends like this, you're like, what weighs better, the race performance or the cash value you're bringing in?
Because the constructors brings in money too.
Exactly.
Right? And he, not to say like, he's compromising them yet. He is, but, they're still quite a bit ahead. Like about, 80, 70 points ahead right now than Ferrari. But over the grand scheme of 24 races, it might actually count to like something meaningful.
Yep.
So how much does that, like you mentioned, that additional income you get from Checo really mean in the grand scheme of things when you're going to come potentially P2 in the constructors?
Yep.
I think it's very telling that we already have quotes from Christian Horner about some of the details of both his and Tsunoda's contracts, saying there are options, there are things that we can do, that we can change. And you're like, I mean, I had assumed A, because you're Red Bull, and B, because that's just a sensible thing to have in your contracts. But to have it confirmed so quickly. Early on, so quickly of, we know everybody's performance, we know what's going down. That's also very telling.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even Marco, a few days before that, it's like, we signed for a 2-year deal, the whole announcement. And then, like you said, Christian just came out, was like, it's actually a 1+1. And we have a lot of stipulations in this contract, which gives us a little hope that there's an out if need be for Checo, because like you said, if this year ends with even Red Bull finishing in second,
or even close to it,
I think it's bye next year.
Yeah,
and the sponsors will have to also be like, well, Red Bull without Checo and a secondary driver that can perform is better than us dropping Red Bull as a team. So I think they're gonna have to outweigh. But if this continues, this is a rough thing for Red Bull to have, especially with the McLarens and now the Mercedes with these upgrades that are finally working. Like you have it's not even a close pairing of drivers anymore.
No, you need to consistently get into Q3. That has to be the expectation for Checo, right? Even if he comes 8th or 7th, that's fine. Just score points.
And stop crashing into people. What is that? What is it with him?
And that costs money as well. That's the other thing. Like, you have the giant, not his fault, but still out of the budget Monaco incident. You have this now where it completely not only wrecked the rear wing, but that's where the gearbox is. And we already had potentially, Max's ERS and everything being switched out this weekend. So it's already potentially looking like a very expensive time.
There was a chart that came out. I mean, obviously it's all estimated numbers. He's top 3 in the Destructors Championship.
Exactly.
Right? And that, again, going back to the trade-off. At some point, Red Bull's going to have to wake up and say, okay, maybe it's not worth it. And also, we've been talking about Checo throughout all of last year as well. It's the same thing. And going back to what our boy Jack Villeneuve said, right? Take away Daniel Ricciardo's negative feedback. I mean, we can talk about that in a second. But, Checo, how many times now for the last few races, not even this year, but last year, have we been talking about Checo's inconsistency?
Yep. I don't get it. How do you start, even this season, you started 6 races, fantastic results. You're getting podiums, 2nd, 3rd, whatever. That's exactly what Red Bull wants you to do. And then it's just it takes him 1 race or even 1 qualifying to completely ruin his confidence. And then he's back to doing what he's doing the last 3 races with 4 points. Come on. You have arguably the best car on the grid.
Yeah.
Or
a competitive car. You have a competitive car.
And I mean, in previous years, not only did he have the security of the other teams not being incredibly competitive, but he also didn't have a driver breathing down his neck for the seat. Yes, everybody thought that was going to be Daniel Ricciardo, but lo and behold, Yuki Tsunoda has come to play. He has upped his game. He has changed. I believe most of the people in his team have been refreshed to be different. He is getting praise on praise on praise from his team principal, from Helmut and Christian now are acknowledging his existence, which, hello, light of day. Yes, he's been here the whole time. You gotta feel that it's not just pressure on Checo. It is them being we actually have a viable option to seat swap now if we wanted to. And that's...
And they also have a young stable, right? They have the Liam Lawsons of the world that, they were promised some sort of future within Red Bull. And now you have an issue of like, if you have one driver not performing, you're going to have to think about that. But Daniel had a great weekend.
He did.
He had a great qualifying, obviously P5, and then finished the race P8 despite a 5-second penalty, which is pretty incredible. Maybe he got a little bit lucky, obviously, because his teammate, Yuki, had quite the spin in the kind of the final few laps. Was lucky not to bin it. But still a great performance with all the negative feedback as well that he got from the press, specifically Villeneuve, through the weekend, which was pretty great.
It was crazy. It was so uncalled for. I don't think anyone saw it coming. I think the commentator, even beside him, was like, "Yeah, so what are we expecting this week?" And he just went full on.
It was like Karun and Danica Patrick were like, what do we say? What do we say?
You know what? If you're a one-time special guest commentator, that's when you say the out-of-pocket stuff. You give people something to talk about. You boost up the ratings. You don't have to come back and deal with the consequences of your actions.
That's so true.
So you know what? Yeah,
fair play.
Say it.
If anything, the other like networks were like, "We got to pick him up for every race weekend."
Yeah.
I wonder what he's going to say next.
Yuki again, tough, but really promising though to see how well he was doing up till the point that he spun.
Yeah.
He was in the points consistently. Like I think at one point he was in between Alonso and Stroll in P7. And he was keeping up with all the cars. That V car is keeping up with the midfield very well, and sometimes even showing that they could be the top of the midfield.
Yep.
That's just quite exciting.
I feel like they've become the new Aston Martin of like last year.
Yeah.
Like they're starting to not only just fight with Williams and the Haas's, now they're fighting with Mercedes once in a while. Like thinking, not Monaco, but before that, I swear they were with Lewis. He was battling out with Lewis in Miami. I think it was in Miami. So I think if Ricciardo, like, yes, this is a one weekend that we saw him perform really well. If he consistently does this, then we got to talk about what happens to Liam Lawson, who is, or reportedly, got a guaranteed seat in RB. So does Ricciardo leave? Yuki signed. So what does that leave him?
Yeah. Silly season. I can't wait. I cannot wait. Ocon, Gasly. Alpine's obviously coming into this weekend. Already the announcement that Ocon is leaving at the end of the year. That happened very quickly after Monaco. A lot of people obviously felt like, okay, this is justified given, the battle that Ocon had with previous teammates and now also with Gasly. Didn't seem like he worked on his relationship issues as much this weekend.
Tell us.
Oh, man. I didn't even realize it during the race because, trackside radio, thanks. The commentators at one point thought that in the middle of the rain, the drivers were going in to put on slicks.
Oh, Lord.
I was very confused. But
maybe Ferrari.
Then Ferrari did do that, actually. So they were partially right.
Yeah.
Oh, but found out after the race that Ocon was like, I'm not letting Gasly through. Are you kidding me? No. And eventually when he did, open the door, it was like, nah, Gasly's tires are gone. It's too late. And you're sitting there being like, okay, yeah, you're not going to be with this team anymore. So, I guess. But you still have to show people who may be hiring you that you're a good hire.
Team player.
And to do stuff on, I don't know, an international broadcast that everyone can see, screen grab, share, and quote you on, that might not be that might not be a good time to say this and to go, no, I'm not going to do the teeny tiny little easy thing for you guys.
Yeah.
No. Really, bud? Really?
Yeah.
It's not a good look.
Yeah.
Look, the true colors are showing. I think a lot of people are like, oh, let's give him a chance. Like, okay, we also don't agree with all the hate he got, and it was a great statement that he put out. But at the same time, I think he has to take criticism at heart, because it's not something you've done once or twice. It's been multiple. And then even just these team radios just show that you have no appreciation of the seat you've been given for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
With a team, yes, that was struggling, but you have had some good years with them too. The first few where he got a race win. He's got podiums before. It's not like they were back of the grid for the last 5 years where he has the opportunity to get angry. No. And I think whoever his future hire or employer is, they will have to look at that and look at his resume and be like, well, is this worth gambling on with Esteban? And would Toto even save him?
Know.
You never know.
I know. I mean, that's what we were even talking about before the weekend. Is I feel like he's such a good driver, but all these antics, the radio, his interviews, how he deals with his teammates, it just, you look at the grid now and you look at how competitive F1 has become and how good some of this young talent is coming in, or like not being given the chance to come in F1. And you're right. Would you take a chance then on somebody who could produce a toxic environment within your team, or would you take a chance on, you know, an equally as fast driver that comes in and can actually make the team collaborative and fun and exciting? You know, and that's where, like, I think people value Carlos for that a lot. You know, people value Carlos that he's a team player. He's aggressive, yes, because he wants to do well, but he's a team player at the end of the day, and he clearly has a bigger picture in mind than just himself.
Yeah,
which is great.
I mean, I wonder what Williams is showing him, because
I
mean, James was coming out saying next year we have big names coming over. So it's like, I don't know, is Adrian Newey coming over? Yeah. That would be interesting. That would be so cool.
Well, they also might just be showing him that you don't have anywhere else to go. Like,
we are the only option.
Right? Like, I don't know how Carlos Sainz is not in one of the top 3 or 4 teams in F1. And I'm really sad, even if he joins that, like Williams, wish him the best of luck. But I would have loved to see him in like Red Bull or Mercedes and like give him a shot at a world championship. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy because Toto just flat out, he's like, sorry, we have no spot for you. We're on Kimi. I was like, okay, learning from your mistakes, which is rightfully on you.
Yep.
And then, I mean, Red Bull, we kind of saw it with all the drama that was happening behind closed doors between the fathers. It's not even the drivers. It's the fathers that have been causing the drama. And then who else is left in the top? I mean, McLaren is locked in.
Yep. Aston Martin, I mean, potential, but
locked up.
I mean, if Lawrence is like, you know, maybe let's take a year off, see what happens. I don't know. Maybe.
Yikes. That would be rough.
Good result for them, by the way.
Yeah.
I was actually very happy.
6th and 7th?
6th and 7th, both cars in the points. And I mean, we talked about this. It almost felt like throughout the entire year, Aston Martin was regressing. At least now they've kind of showed an ability to get back in the points.
Yep.
And they looked pretty competitive throughout the weekend. Like there were times where they were doing well in the wets. There were times where even on the straights, they weren't too behind when it came to straight line speed. Solid.
Yeah, and we love some snarky Alonso.
Yeah.
With these snarky comments after qualifying. I loved it.
Yeah. Even Lance, though. Lance got a question about, you know, is he that far off Alonso? And he's like, well, look at the qualifying. It's 4-4.
Yeah, this year he's been... It's crazy because he's had this, like, quiet performance. I don't even remember talking about Stroll for the last 8 rounds or 9 rounds that it's been around.
Yeah.
So I think he's just been quiet himself. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to avoid all the toxic environment that social media will show Stroll. And he's like, I'm just going to race and see where it goes.
Yep.
And I don't know. Alonso needs to show more, I guess.
I know. Well, next race is his home race, Spanish Grand Prix. Cristina, what are you expecting for that?
Oh, geez. I haven't even thought ahead. I haven't thought of anything beyond, like, home race. Nothing else matters. Nobody else matters. We're at home. I guess just excited to go back to a real track again. Those are always, I know it's not a particularly exciting one as far as permanent tracks go, but I still do enjoy them. And this is a track that every single driver on the grid is familiar with. All the teams have how much data for it. And we typically see upgrades coming to this one as well. So that's probably the one that I'm most, you know, getting pumped about, is just they're going to bring upgrades. What do we get out of that?
Yep. And I think it was last year or the year before they introduced the new layout. Or like they went back to the old layout where it's just a final sector. Yeah. Because we've had how many boring races where once everyone's just maintaining their pace or the degradation. So I think with this new, I know last year we had some good overtakes on that new straight that introduced. So as long as we just get to see another battle like this, I don't want it to be as chaotic as this race or Montreal, but just to see Max being pressured in a way, whether it's Lando, I would love to see the Mercedes back there again. This was great. And then Checo, we're begging you. Just fight in there. It'd just be like top 5. That's all I ask.
Vamos, Checo.
Top 5. Top 5, just battle in
top
there.
Top 5 is too much to ask for. Top 10. Top 10. Come on, man.
Top 10 for Spain, and then for Austria, we can go top 5, and then back to podium. Okay? I like that.
I am really curious about the Mercedes pace. I want to know if it's a one-off. I want to know if this is actually working across multiple circuits. Again, Canada and Spain, they're similar in some aspects, but when it comes to track temperature, weather, drastically different. So I'm very curious to see if Lewis and George do well there. It obviously seems like Lewis is a bit checked out from this year, but it obviously is great to see that even despite that, he's trying to put in his best effort, at least in qualifying.
I mean, Andrea Stella did say that Mercedes upgrade is real.
Right.
They saw it in Monaco, which is a slow track, and then now you saw it on very high speed, slow corners in Montreal, which gives them the package to be like, okay, you go to a real track in Spain. Let's see how they do again.
Yep.
I'm excited. It should be fun.
Well, this was a fantastic weekend. As always, by the way, we have people that have helped us throughout the weekend. I know you, Christina, were with Pepe Jeans.
Peppy Jeans,
Pepe
yes.
Jeans, amazing. We had an amazing time with the Aston Martin team, with Parallels. Thank you guys so much for that. And Henny, I'm also, remiss if I can't mention that we have two people. Obviously, we were missing this weekend. Mikey and Fevin, our co-hosts.
Right here.
They're right over here, imaginary friends. Yeah, no, but we will see them very shortly at an upcoming race reflection, which we're looking forward to getting them back on. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let us know below if you felt like there was anyone else that could have won today's race than Max Verstappen. Definitely curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
Lando,
and we'll see you guys
Lando.
in the next episode.